The first reaction we saw is called as the Fernandez reaction, or also called as the early reaction. It is measured as the area of redness, and what is important here to note that if the area of redness or induration is more than 10 millimeters, the reaction is said to be positive. It is similar to the delayed hypersensitivity reaction that is found in the Montague's reaction. So the early reaction, that is the Fernandez reaction of leprosy, is similar to the tuberculin test, is similar to the Montague's test. The second component, the Mitsuda or the late reaction, it is read in 21 days. So a long time. In 21 days it is read, and here we don't see erythema or induration. What we see is a nodule. There is a nodule formation, and we are concerned about the diameter of this nodule. Also, please pay attention. In the early reaction, we were measuring the diameter of the erythema, and that should be more than 10 millimeters, I said. In the late reaction, I am measuring the diameter of the nodule, and here I am saying that it should be more than 5 millimeters for the late reaction to be said as positive. The nodule may ulcerate and afterwards it heals. What do I demonstrate? I demonstrate the presence of cell-mediated immunity towards leprosy. So the late reaction demonstrates cell-mediated immunity. The early reaction demonstrates hypersensitivity. Very important. Because it is important, I will write it down. The early reaction in the lepromin test, it is also called as the Fernandez reaction, demonstrates hypersensitivity reaction, HSR, and the late reaction, it is also called as the Mitsuda reaction, demonstrates cell-mediated immunity for leprosy. Early reaction is defined as more than 10 millimeter of erythema or induration. What is induration? Induration is a palpable swelling. So if you have a swelling which is palpable and the diameter is more than 10 millimeters, early reaction is positive. For the late reaction, what I measure is a nodule, and the cutoff is not 10 but 5 millimeter. Okay, as we saw earlier, the early reaction is measured early and the late reaction is measured late, therefore their names also. What is important? Never I had mentioned that this is a diagnostic test. This is not a diagnostic test at all. It does a lot of other things. It is used for prognosis, it is used for classification of leprosy, but it is not used for diagnosis. Please drill this into your head, because everybody knows that this is where we confuse, and therefore there are a lot of questions on this. What are the other tests? Not really important, but still you should know, are the lymphocyte transformation test and the leukocyte migration inhibition test. These are used to diagnose subclinical infections. So all that importance is attached to just that factor that subclinical infections are determined by these tests. By the way, we now believe that 95% of the population is immune to leprosy. It is only 5% of the population who is prone for leprosy. And genetic research also tells us that these genetic loci which make the 5% people prone to leprosy are also the people who are prone for Parkinson's. So these are two very distinct diseases. Surprisingly, we now believe that at a biochemical level, maybe Hansen's or leprosy is related to Parkinson's disease. Something I would remember because it is very new, very interesting. Hansen's or leprosy, which is an infectious disease, may be related at a biochemical level with Parkinson's, because the genetic loci which predispose to both these conditions are found to be same. Many loci are common. So just a new thing you should know before you go to the exam. Test for humoral responses. By the way, this is also new. Mycobacteria, tuberculosis or leprosy, we know that CMI plays an important role. Now we are talking about humoral responses. This was not considered important earlier, but as our knowledge progresses, we know that humoral responses are also present. We are not very sure how effective they are, but humoral responses are definitively present. and therefore we have tests to measure that. The first test you have is the fluorescent leprosy antibody test. The second one is antibody competition test for monoclonal antibodies, and the third one is ELISA, which determines the PGL. So these are tests for measuring antibody responses or the humoral responses. Treatment, simplified thing, there are adult treatment and the children regimen. What I have shown you is the adult regimen. You have rifampicin once a month and clofazimine and dapsone daily. The rifampicin that is taken once a month is taken under supervision, much like that of DOTS. So this is once a month rifampicin, clofazimine and dapsone are to be taken daily. In paucibacillary leprosy, the treatment duration and the regimen changes. Rifampicin is taken same under supervision once a month and dapsone is taken. Clofazimine is not present. What differs is multibacillary, the treatment lasts for 1 year or 12 months, and in paucibacillary the treatment lasts for 6 months. So this slide is again important. Multibacillary, you have 3 drugs. In paucibacillary you have 2 drugs. In paucibacillary you do not have clofazimine. Paucibacillary 6 months treatment and multibacillary 12 months treatment. There is a special category which was recently introduced by the WHO called as the ROM therapy. ROM therapy, rifampicin, ofloxacin and minocycline, and hence it is called as the ROM therapy. Wonderful therapy, single dose, only 1 dose of ROM for single lesion paucibacillary leprosy. So if you have just 1 lesion, there is no other clinical manifestations, no other nerve damage, then it is called as a single lesion paucibacillary leprosy and the treatment is ROM. And remember, it is a single dose therapy. ROM is a single dose therapy for leprosy, single lesion. Till what time do we follow up the patients? In case of paucibacillary leprosy, the patient has to be followed at least once in a year for 2 years. So in paucibacillary leprosy, once in a year for at least 2 years, and in multibacillary leprosy, again once in a year, but this time for 5 years. So multibacillary leprosy, once in a year for 2 years, multibacillary leprosy, once in a year for 5 years. The patient has to be followed. What are the vaccine candidates? Not really important because we do not have any potent vaccines right now in the market. There is a lot of research going on, but still sometimes MCQs have appeared, and therefore you have on your slides Cat1 and Cat2. Under category 1 we have either Mycobacterium leprae itself or derivatives of Mycobacterium leprae, and under Cat2 we have related mycobacteria but they are not directly Mycobacterium leprae. Under this head you have BCG for Mycobacterium tuberculosis, BCG plus M vaccine, and lastly killed ICRC bacillus. So these are potential candidates. Still we do not have a potent vaccine for leprosy, but these are potential candidates and can appear. Chemoprophylaxis is done by dapsone 1 to 4 mg per kg body weight for 3 years, or ACE-dapsone, which is 1 injection intramuscular every 10 weeks, 3 injections in total. So if you ask me, ACE-dapsone seems much better because the frequency is much less. Incidence and prevalence. I know we have discussed this in epidemiology. I have just put here because these are 2 important parameters that the leprosy program uses for monitoring of the disease. Incidence, as it is shown, is sensitive for transmission and it is used in monitoring the success of the program. If the MCQ is further refined, if it says incidence in adults and incidence in children, what is more sensitive? And the answer would be incidence in children, because we saw that if incidence in children is present, it means that the disease is very much alive and it is kicking and it is spreading. So incidence shows transmission, prevalence shows the disease burden and therefore gives you tools for planning and management of the disease. Okay, with that we finish leprosy. Let's move on to the next disease, malaria. Malaria, as all of you know, is a disease of protozoal origin and is caused by infection with parasites of the genus Plasmodium. Transmitted to man by certain species of female Anopheline mosquito. Remember, females bite, female Anopheles bites. Male Anopheles mosquitoes do not transmit malaria. And why do females bite? Females bite because female mosquitoes have to lay eggs, and for laying eggs they need a lot of energy, and for getting energy blood is a very good source. So therefore they feed before laying eggs, and therefore they bite humans. So female Anopheline mosquitoes, various species, bite human beings and thus spread malaria. Malaria is caused because of a protozoan which is a Plasmodium, and the vector is mosquito. The vector's name is Anopheles. Please get this very clear. Sometimes you get confused. Okay, Plasmodium is the protozoa which causes malaria, and female Anopheline mosquito is the vector which injects Plasmodium into your blood. Problem statement: worldwide problem. More than 100 countries in the world are considered malarious, present almost everywhere in the world. There was a mission called as Rollback Malaria, and I have put the important points in Rollback Malaria on your slide so that if you have questions on this, you can solve that. Rollback Malaria basically said that we have to strengthen health systems. You have proper use of treated mosquito nets. What are treated mosquito nets? These are impregnated mosquito nets wherein the substance, the active ingredient, the insecticide is impregnated on the mosquito net. Better access to health care, effective administration of medicines, and anti-malarial drugs and vaccine development. Agent factor, I hope all of you know the slide in front of you right now, is Plasmodium vivax, Falciparum, malariae and ovale. Which one of these is most deadly? The answer should be Plasmodium falciparum. Plasmodium falciparum is the most deadly of all the malarias. It has got a tendency to cause cerebral malaria, and resistance development is very rampant with falciparum. It is not that common with others, but falciparum develops resistance very fast and can cause cerebral malaria. Relapse, again, cutting out the long story, this is just the crux of the thing. Falciparum and malariae, the relapse is due to latent liver scions, and for ovale and vivax, it is due to sporozoites. This is important to remember, not only in community medicine, again in microbiology, parasitology, this can be asked. Falciparum and malariae have liver scions, and ovale and vivax relapse due to sporozoites. Host factor, for newborns, they are protected against malaria because they have increased HbF. HbF is the fetal hemoglobin, if you remember, which is very much resistant to the malarial parasite because they cannot eat this hemoglobin very easily. Men are more affected because they are outdoors as compared to females. Sickle cell trait individuals are protected against malaria. Malaria is never severe in sickle cell trait individuals. Why? You remember the sickle cell trait, the malaria, the RBC is crescent shaped. So the parasite cannot attack the cell and destroy it, and therefore they are negative. Duffy negative individuals are also protected against certain forms of malaria. Pregnancy, if a female is pregnant, she is more susceptible to malaria. Population mobility, occupation are important risk factors. People who work outside, say for example farmers, people when they come from rural areas to urban areas, take malaria with them because the parasite also travels. Immunity, you have a collective immunity. Malaria is almost always present in India, so therefore the collective immunity is very, very high. The importance of this immunity is highlighted when a foreigner comes to India. Say for example a Britisher comes to India. Malaria is not very common in the British. Therefore when they come to India, they get a very severe disease which is called as black water fever. There is massive hemolysis and the urine turns cola colored, and therefore it is called as black water fever. Indians very rarely or almost never suffer from such serious side effects of malaria because the immunity is already pretty high. Environmental factors, basically it spreads in the rainy season, and there are resting habits of malarial mosquitoes that you should know, which are called as endophily and exophily. Endophily means the mosquito rests inside the house. Exophilia means the mosquito goes outside to rest. So these are two types of habits the mosquitoes have, endophily and exophilia. Clinical features, you know that there is a cold stage and a hot stage, that everybody knows, because chills and rigors are classical for malaria. Whenever the clinician asks you, tell me a disease with chills and rigors, the first thing we all think of is malaria. So there you have it, you have a cold stage where you have chills and rigors. There is increase in temperature, there can be severe headache, body pain, and there is weak and rapid pulse. This stage lasts for about 1 hour and you pass on to the hot stage. The hot stage, there is very high fever and there is rapid perspiration, therefore the temperature comes down because of perspiration, and in the sweating stage you have profuse sweating, temperature drops to normal. This stage lasts for 2 to 4 hours. So you have 3 stages: cold stage, hot stage and sweating stage. The cycle I have written here: falciparum has a 48-hour cycle and Vivax has a 72-hour cycle. That means falciparum has a cycle of 2 days and Vivax has a cycle of 3 days. Diagnosis is done by a film. You have two kinds of films, a thin film and a thick film. The thick film is made to look at the parasite, to look at the falciparum or to look at the species which is affecting. The thick film is made to identify the parasite and the thin film is made to identify the species of the parasite. So they are two different things that we do with the thick and the thin films. I make a thick film to see if the agent is positive or negative. I make a thick film to see if the agent is positive or negative, and I make a thin film to identify. I make a thin film to identify what is present. Is it falciparum? Is it Vivax? It is ovale? Is it malaria? So to identify these, I make a thin film. You also have fluorescent antibody test and rapid dipstick assays are also available these days. We were talking about eradication era. Malaria kicked us back, but we have surely moved ahead. The rates that we use right now are on your slides. You have annual parasite incidence, annual blood examination rate and annual falciparum incidence. The other rates that are given are older rates. These are the newer rates which are used for measurement of the malarious epidemic right now. Management of malaria, you have case detection, treatment on clinical grounds. For that matter, if a patient comes from an area in which malaria is rampant, any fever in that area should be treated as malaria and anti-malarious treatment should be started immediately. Chemoprophylaxis should be given for pregnant females in intense areas and travelers who are going to endemic areas. Again, a Britisher comes to India, he should start on chemoprophylaxis 1 week before he comes here, and he should continue with the chemoprophylaxis 4 weeks after he leaves the country. So that these are important recommendations: 1 week before he comes and 4 weeks after he leaves the country. Treatment in high risk areas. This is a simplified treatment regimen that I have put here. You have a lot of complicated regimens for areas where this is not common, areas where malaria is common, for children and for adults. The treatment regimen that you see here is for adults and this is for the high risk areas. More often than not, you are likely to be asked questions on this slide alone. And you have chloroquine and primaquine on day 1. If Vivax is confirmed on the thin slide, you have primaquine again for the next 5 days. On day 2 chloroquine and on day 3 chloroquine. So this is the simplest of the regimens that is available for an adult in an area of high risk. For vector control, that is mosquito control, you have anti-adult measures and anti-larval measures. Anti-adult measures, all of you know, we spray DDT, we spray malathion, we have other insecticides and we all spray that to control the mosquito menace. Space application is pesticide application in the form of fog. I hope you have seen those healthcare workers with those fog machines. When they go in your locality, the whole locality gets foggy. So that is the space application. Individual methods, you can have mosquito repellents, white clothing with full sleeves, bed nets, mosquito coils, and screening of houses. Anti-larval measures, you have Paris green. It is a stomach poison and it is used for anti-larval measures. Then you have integrated control, in which bioenvironmental and personal measures both are used in conjunction. Vaccines reduce severity and complications of malaria, arrest development of malarial parasite in the mosquito. There are a lot of candidates out there, but the one you should really know is this, what I have written here. What you should know about malarial vaccines is the synthetic cocktail vaccine, which is the PFS25, and it is a transmission blocking vaccine. Remember, there are a lot of candidates, but this is one of the forerunners. The name is PFS25, and what does it do? It is a transmission blocking vaccine. With that, we complete malaria. Thank you.